The galaxy had been holding its breath for years, waiting to see if peace could finally take root between humanity and the Zorothian Accord. For decades, tensions simmered just below the surface, a fragile thread of diplomacy, all that stood between coexistence and chaos. The Zorothians, an advanced alien coalition with shimmering silver ships and towering crystalline cities, were not like humans. Their culture was built on unity and logic, while humanity's fractured nations often struggled to agree on anything. Still, talks had continued, led by Daniel Carter, a calm and patient diplomat known for his ability to find common ground, even in the most hostile situations. Alongside him was Laura Bennett, a brilliant scientist whose understanding of Zorothian technology made her invaluable to the negotiations. But everything changed in an instant. It started with rumors of unrest within Earth's military. Some believed that peace talks were taking too long, that humanity was wasting precious resources trying to negotiate when they should be preparing for war. General Ethan Hayes, a decorated officer known for his aggressive tactics, became the face of this growing movement. He argued that humanity couldn't afford to show weakness, not when surrounded by so many unknown threats in the vastness of space. His speeches resonated with those who felt uneasy about relying on diplomacy alone. "We cannot wait forever," he said during one broadcast. "If we do not act, others will." Daniel heard these words as he sat in his office aboard the orbital station where the peace talks were being held. The room was dimly lit, holographic screens displaying news feeds flickering across the walls. He sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. Laura entered moments later, her face pale. "You've seen it?" she asked quietly, nodding toward the screens. Daniel nodded without looking up. The headlines screamed accusations. Humanity abandons. Peace talks. What no one knew yet, not the public, not even Daniel or Laura, was that the decision had already been made for them. A rogue faction within Earth's military, operating outside official channels, had launched an unprovoked attack on a neutral Zorothian outpost near the edge of explored space. The outpost, a small research facility studying cosmic phenomena, was obliterated in seconds. Hundreds of Zorothian scientists died instantly, their work vaporized along with the structure itself. It was a brutal, senseless act, and one that sent shockwaves through the galaxy. When the news reached the peace delegation, panic erupted. Daniel rushed to the main conference hall, where representatives from both sides had gathered. The atmosphere was electric, charged with anger and fear. Zorothian envoys stood rigid, their elongated forms casting strange shadows under the harsh lights. One of them stepped forward, his voice cold and mechanical. "This is unacceptable," he said, addressing the human delegation. "Your actions speak louder than your promises. We can no longer trust you." Daniel tried to reason with them, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "Please, give us time to investigate. This wasn't sanctioned by our government. Someone has acted against protocol." But his words fell on deaf ears. The Zorathians turned away, their movements synchronized, as though connected by some unseen force. They left the room without another word, leaving behind only silence. Hours passed before the full scope of what had happened began to sink in. Reports poured in from Earth, detailing how the attack had been carried out by a secretive unit operating under the code name Shadow Strike. No one claimed responsibility publicly, but the damage was done. Humanity's reputation, painstakingly rebuilt after centuries of internal conflict, lay in ruins. News outlets painted humanity as warmongers, unwilling to embrace peace even when offered a chance. Protesters filled the streets of major cities, holding signs that read "No more war" and "talk." "Don't attack." Laura spent the night pacing her quarters, unable to sleep. She replayed the events over and over in her mind, searching for anything that might have prevented this disaster. Had she missed a sign? Could she have pushed harder for transparency during the talks? Her thoughts kept returning to the Zorathians, their faces etched with betrayal. She remembered the hours they'd spent together, sharing knowledge and ideas. For a brief moment, she had believed they could truly understand each other. Now, that hope seemed laughable. Meanwhile, back on Earth, President Rachel Monroe faced mounting pressure from every direction. World leaders demanded answers, threatening to cut ties with humanity's central government if accountability wasn't swift and decisive. At the same time, factions within her own administration called for retaliation, arguing that showing weakness now would only embolden the Zorathians further. Monroe locked herself in the Situation Room, surrounded by advisors who spoke over one another, their voices rising in frustration. In the end, she made the only decision she could: declare a state of emergency and prepare for the possibility of war. As dawn broke over the orbital station, Daniel found himself standing at a viewport, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. Somewhere out there, the Zorathians were planning their response. He didn't need to imagine what form it might take. History had shown time and again how quickly conflicts escalated once trust was broken. His reflection stared back at him, and the glass hollow-eyed and defeated. "What have we done?" he whispered, the question hanging unanswered in the void. The days following the attack on the Zorathian outpost were chaos. Earth, once a planet striving for unity under the banner of peace, now fractured into opposing sides. The news of the rogue military faction's actions spread like wildfire, igniting debates in every corner of human society. Some people saw the attack as a necessary step, a show of strength to protect humanity from potential threats. Others viewed it as an unforgivable betrayal of everything the peace talks stood for. Protests erupted in major cities, with crowds chanting slogans that ranged from "Defend Humanity" to "No More Bloodshed." President Rachel Monroe found herself caught in the middle of the storm. Her office was flooded with calls from world leaders, each demanding answers and accountability. The United Nations held emergency sessions, their chambers filled with shouting matches as representatives argued over what to do next. Some called for immediate action against the rogue faction, while others pushed for a stronger stance against the Zorathians, believing they would retaliate regardless of who was at fault. Monroe sat through meeting after meeting, her face pale but resolute. She knew that any decision she made would alienate part of the population, but indecision was no longer an option. In the streets, emotions ran high. In New York City, thousands gathered outside the United Nations headquarters, holding candles and signs calling for peace. Among them was Emily Carter, Daniel's younger sister, who had always admired her brother's dedication to diplomacy. She clutched a handmade sign that read "War is not the answer," and tried to stay hopeful, despite the growing tension around her. Nearby, counter-protesters waved flags and banners supporting General Ethan Hayes, whose aggressive rhetoric had gained him a loyal following. Hayes himself appeared on news broadcasts daily, his steely gaze and confident tone striking a chord with those who believed humanity needed to assert dominance in the galaxy. "Peace cannot be achieved through weakness," Hayes declared during one such interview. "The Zorathians respect strength, not words. If we want to survive, we must show them we are not afraid to fight." His words resonated deeply with many, especially soldiers stationed across the galaxy. On board the battleship Aurora, Captain Ryan Mitchell watched Hayes' speech with a mix of admiration and unease. Mitchell had spent years defending humanity's borders, but he had never imagined being drawn into a conflict sparked by betrayal. He glanced at his crew, their faces tense as they listened to Hayes' call for readiness. They were trained for war, but this felt different, messier, more personal. Still, orders were orders, and Mitchell knew they would follow them without question. Amidst the turmoil, Laura Bennett worked tirelessly to salvage what remained of the diplomatic relationship between humanity and the Zorathian. She reached out to her contacts within the Accord, sending messages through secure channels and pleading for understanding. But her efforts went unanswered. Each message she sent seemed to vanish into the void, leaving her feeling more isolated with each passing day. Frustrated and exhausted, she confided in Daniel during one of their rare moments alone. "They won't even acknowledge me," Lara said, her voice heavy with defeat. "It's like we've been erased." Daniel nodded, his expression grim. "They don't trust us anymore. Who can blame them? We've betrayed them twice, now first by attacking, and then by failing to hold those responsible accountable." Laura sighed, leaning back in her chair. "Do you think there's any way to fix this?" "I don't know," Daniel admitted. "But if we don't try, then all of this." He gestured toward the holographic screens, displaying news of riots and protests, was for nothing. While the political and social landscape of Earth unraveled, the consequences of the attack began to ripple outward. Refugees from colonies near the Outer Rim reported increased patrols by Zorathian ships, their movements deliberate and intimidating. Trade routes were disrupted, leaving entire settlements cut off from vital supplies. Panic set in as rumors of an impending invasion spread, fueled by sensationalist media coverage. Families packed up their belongings and fled deeper into human-controlled space, hoping to escape whatever retaliation might come. On the colony of New Haven, Alex Morgan watched the skies nervously, a former engineer turned farmer. Alex had built a quiet life for himself and his 8-year-old daughter. Lily, their small homestead, was nestled in the rolling hills outside the main settlement, far enough away to avoid the worst of the unrest, but close enough to feel its effects. Supplies were running low, and the local market had been shut down due to shortages. Alex did his best to shield Lily from the fear gripping the community, telling her stories about brave explorers and distant stars to keep her mind off the uncertainty. One evening, his father and daughter sat together on the porch, watching the sunset. Lily asked, "Daddy, are the aliens going to hurt us?" Alex hesitated, unsure how to answer. "I don't think so, sweetheart. Most of them aren't bad. It's just, some people made mistakes, and now everyone's scared." Lily frowned, clearly unsatisfied with the explanation. "Why can't they just talk it out?" Alex smiled faintly, ruffling her hair. If only it were that simple. Back on Earth, Intelligence Officer Samantha Brooks pieced together fragments of information about the rogue faction responsible for the attack. Working late into the night, she uncovered evidence pointing to a shadowy cabal within the military-industrial complex. These individuals, driven by profit and power, had orchestrated the strike to provoke war and capitalize on the resulting arms race. Sam's discovery chilled her to the bone. If the truth got out, it could destabilize Earth's government entirely, but keeping it hidden meant allowing innocent lives to suffer. She reached out to Daniel, knowing he might still have allies willing to listen. Together, they began planning how to expose the conspiracy, aware that doing so could cost them everything. As they worked, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. The Zorathians weren't known for patience, and every moment wasted brought humanity closer to disaster. Across the galaxy, tensions continued to rise. Ships patrolled contested regions, their weapons primed for engagement. Diplomacy seemed like a distant memory, replaced by the looming specter of war. Yet amidst the fear and anger, a few individuals still clung to hope that somehow, against all odds, peace could be restored before it was too late. The Zorathians did not wait long to respond. Their retaliation came swiftly and without warning, striking fear into the hearts of everyone on the colony of New Haven. One moment, Alex Morgan was tending to his crops under the bright morning sun, and the next, the sky darkened with the ominous hum of alien engines. Massive Zorathian warships descended from orbit, their sleek silver hulls glinting like blades in the light. Energy beams lanced down from above, targeting key structures in the settlement power stations, communication arrays, and supply depots. Explosions erupted across the landscape, sending plumes of smoke billowing into the air. Alex grabbed Lily by the hand and pulled her toward the shelter beneath their house. "Stay close to me," he shouted over the deafening roar of destruction. The ground shook violently as another blast struck nearby, throwing debris in all directions. Alex shielded Lily with his body, his heart pounding as they reached the safety of the underground bunker. Inside, the space was cramped, but stocked with enough food and water to last a few weeks. Still, Alex knew they couldn't stay there forever. The colony was being systematically dismantled, and survival meant finding a way out. Above ground chaos reigned. Survivors scrambled for cover, their faces etched with terror as they fled burning buildings and collapsing streets. Some tried to fight back, wielding makeshift weapons or firing rifles scavenged from local armories. But their efforts were futile against the advanced technology of the Zor. The attackers showed no mercy, their drones sweeping through the wreckage to ensure nothing and no one remained functional. It was clear that this was not just an attack, it was a message. Humanity's aggression would be met with overwhelming force. As the hours passed, Alex listened to the distant sounds of destruction while holding Lily close. She trembled in his arms, her small frame shaking with sobs. "It's okay, sweetheart," he murmured, though his voice cracked with uncertainty. "We'll get through this." When the bombardment finally ceased, an eerie silence settled over the colony. Alex cautiously opened the hatch to the bunker and peered outside. What he saw made his stomach churn. The once thriving settlement was now a wasteland of charred ruins and smoldering wreckage. Bodies lay strewn about, some unrecognizable beneath layers of ash. The air smelled acrid, thick with smoke and despair. Alex clenched his fists, anger bubbling inside him, but he forced himself to focus. Survival came first. He gathered what supplies he could carry and loaded them into a battered utility vehicle parked near the house. Then, with Lily secured in the passenger seat, he set off toward the wilderness beyond the colony. The journey ahead would be perilous, but staying put meant certain death. As they drove, Alex kept scanning the horizon for signs of Zorathian patrols. He knew the aliens wouldn't leave witnesses, they'd come back to finish the job. Back on Earth, the images of New Haven's devastation dominated every news channel. Footage captured by fleeing refugees painted a grim picture of the attack, showing the sheer scale of the destruction. Public outrage surged, with many accusing the government of failing to protect its citizens. Protesters took to the streets. Again, their chants growing angrier. "Enough is enough," they screamed, demanding answers and action. President Rachel Monroe addressed the nation in a televised speech, her tone somber but firm. "We are facing one of the darkest chapters in our history," she said, standing at a podium flanked by military advisors. "But we will not give in to fear. We will stand united and defend what is ours." Her words resonated with some, but others saw them as empty promises. General Ethan Hayes seized the opportunity to push his agenda further, calling for an immediate counteroffensive. "If we don't strike back now, they'll see us as weak," he argued during a meeting with top brass. "We need to hit them where it hurts, right at their core." The idea of launching a direct assault on the Zorathian homeworld sparked heated debate within the military command. Some officers supported Hayes' plan, believing it was the only way to regain control of the situation. Others warned that such a move could escalate the conflict beyond anything humanity could handle. Captain Ryan Mitchell, who had been monitoring the situation from the Aurora, voiced his concerns during a strategy session. "Sir, we're talking about attacking their home planet," Mitchell said, his tone measured but urgent. "That's not just retaliation. That's declaring total war. Are we ready for that?" Hayes fixed him with a cold stare. "We don't have a choice, Captain. If we sit here and do nothing, they'll keep coming until there's nothing left." Despite the risks, the decision was made to prepare for an offensive campaign. Orders went out to mobilize every available ship, including civilian vessels retrofitted for combat. Factories worked around the clock to produce weapons and ammunition, while recruitment centers saw lines stretching for blocks as volunteers signed up to join the fight. The galaxy braced itself for what promised to be one of the largest military operations in human history. Meanwhile, Daniel Carter and Laura Bennett struggled to find a way to de-escalate the situation. With trust between humanity and the Zor shattered, their attempts at diplomacy felt increasingly futile. Laura spent hours poring over data, searching for any clue that might help them understand the Zorathians' motivations. Daniel, on the other hand, focused on building alliances among Earth's fractured factions. He believed that unity was humanity's best chance at survival, even if achieving it seemed impossible. Samantha Brooks continued her investigation into the rogue faction behind the initial attack. Determined to expose the truth before it was too late, she uncovered evidence linking several high-ranking officials to the conspiracy, including individuals with ties to powerful corporations profiting from the ongoing conflict. Sam knew that revealing this information could turn the tide of public opinion, but doing so also put a target on her back. Every step forward felt like walking a tightrope over an abyss. As the days turned into weeks, the galaxy held its breath. Refugees poured into safer regions, carrying stories of loss and survival. Among them was Alex Morgan, who led a group of survivors through treacherous terrain in search of sanctuary. Along the way, he encountered others like him, ordinary people, thrust into extraordinary circumstances. Together, they formed a fragile community bound by shared hardship and hope. Yet, even as humanity prepared for war, whispers of resistance began to spread. There were still those who refused to believe that violence was the answer. They clung to the belief that peace was possible, no matter how distant it seemed. For now, their voices were drowned out by the drumbeat of conflict, but in the shadows, seeds of change were beginning to take root. The galaxy was a powder keg, and it felt like every action only brought it closer to exploding. On Earth, whispers of betrayal began to spread, carried by those who refused to believe that humanity's leadership could be so reckless. Intelligence Officer Samantha Brooks spent her days buried in classified files, piecing together fragments of information that painted a chilling picture. The rogue faction responsible for the attack on the Zorathian outpost wasn't just a group of rogue soldiers acting out of misguided patriotism. It was something far more sinister. A cabal of powerful individuals within Earth's military-industrial complex had orchestrated the strike. Driven by greed and a desire to profit from the chaos of war, Sam worked tirelessly in a dimly lit office, deep within an intelligence facility. Her desk was cluttered with holographic displays, each showing streams of data, intercepted communications, and financial records. She traced money trails leading to shadowy corporations that manufactured weapons and ships. These companies stood to gain billions if the conflict escalated into full-scale war. It was a horrifying realization. The attack hadn't been about protecting humanity or asserting dominance. It had been a calculated move to ignite a galactic arms race. As Sam dug deeper, she uncovered evidence implicating several high-ranking officials, including a former defense contractor turned politician named Victor Lang. Lang had ties to both the military and corporate sectors, making him a key figure in the conspiracy. His speeches advocating for strength over diplomacy suddenly took on a darker meaning. Sam realized that exposing this truth could change everything, but it would also put her life in grave danger. The cabal wouldn't hesitate to silence anyone who threatened their plans. She needed help, and there was only one person she trusted enough to share her findings with: Daniel Carter. Though the peace talks had collapsed, Daniel still commanded respect among certain circles. More importantly, he had access to people who might listen. Sam reached out to him through secure channels, arranging a secret meeting in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the capital city. When they met, Sam wasted no time. "Daniel, you need to see this," she said. pulling up holographic projections of the incriminating documents. Daniel's face grew pale as he sifted through the evidence. The weight of what he was seeing hit him like a punch to the gut. This changes everything, he whispered, his voice trembling. If we can get this out, maybe we can stop this madness. But getting the information to the public wouldn't be easy. The Cabal's reach extended far and wide, infiltrating media outlets and government agencies. Any attempt to leak the documents would have to be carefully planned. Together, Sam and Daniel devised a strategy. They would encrypt the files and send them to multiple independent journalists simultaneously, ensuring that even if some were silenced, others would still release the story. It was risky, but they had no other choice. While Sam and Daniel plotted their next move, General Ethan Hayes continued to push for war. His influence grew stronger with each passing day, fueled by public fear and anger. The military mobilization was nearing completion, with fleets assembling at strategic points across human-controlled space. Captain Ryan Mitchell, stationed aboard the Aurora, received orders to prepare for deployment. He gathered his crew for a briefing, his expression grim. "We're heading into hostile territory," Mitchell announced, pacing in front of the assembled officers. "Our mission is to weaken the Zorathian forces and pave the way for a larger offensive. This won't be easy, and I won't lie to you, casualties are likely. But remember why we're doing this. We're fighting for our survival." The crew nodded solemnly, though some exchanged uneasy glances. Mitchell couldn't shake the feeling that they were being sent on a suicide mission. Still, he knew better than to question orders. Instead, he focused on preparing his team, running drills, and double-checking equipment. If they were going to face the Zorathians, they needed to be ready. Meanwhile, Alex Morgan and his group of refugees trudged through the wilderness, searching for safety. Supplies were running low, and exhaustion was taking its toll. The landscape around them was harsh and unforgiving, filled with jagged cliffs and dense forests. At night, they huddled around small fires, sharing stories to keep morale alive. One evening, as Alex sat staring into the flames, Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, do you think we'll ever go home?" she asked, her voice soft and hesitant. Alex hesitated, unsure how to answer. "I don't know, sweetheart," he said finally. "But wherever we end up, we'll make it work. We always do." His words were meant to comfort her, but they rang hollow even to his own ears. Home was gone, reduced to rubble by the Zorathian attack. All they had now was each other, and the hope that somehow, somewhere, they'd find a place to start over. Back on Earth, President Rachel Monroe faced mounting pressure from all sides. Protests erupted outside her office, with crowds chanting for justice and accountability. World leaders demanded answers, threatening to sever ties with humanity if the rogue faction wasn't brought to heel. Meanwhile, factions within her administration called for escalation, arguing that showing weakness now would only embolden the Zorathians further. Monroe locked herself in the Situation Room, surrounded by advisors who spoke over one another, their voices rising in frustration. In the end, she made the only decision she could: declare martial law and tighten security across the planet. Troops patrolled major cities, enforcing curfews and quelling unrest. The move sparked outrage among civil rights advocates, who accused Monroe of sacrificing freedom for control. Yet she knew that maintaining order was crucial if humanity had any chance of surviving the coming storm. Amidst the chaos, Laura Bennett tried to reach out to her contacts within the Zorathian leadership once again. She sent messages pleading for dialogue, hoping to convince them that not all humans were responsible for the attack. But her efforts went unanswered, leaving her feeling more isolated than ever, frustrated and exhausted. She confided in Daniel during one of their rare moments alone. "They won't even acknowledge me," Laura said, her voice heavy with defeat. "It's like we've been erased." Daniel nodded, his expression grim. "They don't trust us anymore. Who can blame them? We've betrayed them twice, now first by attacking, and then by failing to hold those responsible accountable. Laura sighed, leaning back in her chair. Do you think there's any way to fix this? I don't know, Daniel admitted. But if we don't try, then all of this. He gestured toward the holographic screens, displaying news of riots and protests. Was for nothing. As the galaxy teetered on the brink of war, shadows of betrayal loomed large. Sam and Daniel raced against time to expose the truth, knowing that failure meant sealing humanity's fate. Refugees like Alex clung to hope, while soldiers like Mitchell prepared for battle. And above it all, the Zorathians watched silently, waiting to see if humanity would prove itself worthy of trust or confirm their worst fears. The battle was fierce, and the cost was devastating. General Ethan Hayes had launched humanity's counteroffensive with a bold plan. Strike at a critical Zorathian supply line located near the edge of explored space. The operation involved hundreds of ships, including retrofitted civilian vessels manned by volunteers who had never seen combat before. Captain Ryan Mitchell led one of the assault groups aboard the Aurora, his crew tense but determined as they approached their target. The Zorathians were ready. Their defenses were formidable, with swarms of drones and energy shields protecting the supply hub. When the first wave of human ships entered firing range, the aliens retaliated with precision and overwhelming force. Energy beams sliced through space, obliterating smaller vessels instantly. Explosions lit up the void as debris floated aimlessly in the aftermath of each hit. Despite the odds, Mitchell's squadron pressed forward, weaving through enemy fire to deliver their payload. Stay sharp, Mitchell shouted over the comms, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. We're almost in position. The crew worked frantically, their movements practiced but hurried. Weapons operators targeted weak points in the Zorathian defenses, while engineers scrambled to repair damage caused by enemy attacks. One of the gunners, a young woman named Jessica Cole, locked onto a drone formation and fired a barrage of missiles. The explosion rippled outward, temporarily clearing a path for the Aurora to advance. But the victory was short-lived. A massive Zorathian cruiser emerged from behind an asteroid field, its cannons trained directly on Mitchell's ship. Alarms blared as the crew braced for impact. The first shot grazed the Aurora's hull, sending sparks flying across the bridge. Shields are down to 40%, yelled the engineer at the console. Mitchell gritted his teeth, knowing they couldn't take another direct hit. Divert all power to the engines, he ordered. We need to get closer. Against all odds, the Aurora managed to slip past the cruiser, launching torpedoes that struck the supply hub's core reactor. The resulting explosion was catastrophic, engulfing the structure in flames and sending shockwaves through the battlefield. Cheers erupted on the bridge, but Mitchell silenced them quickly. Don't celebrate yet, he said. We've still got a fight ahead of us. As the human fleet began its retreat, the Zorathians pursued relentlessly. Smaller ships acted as decoys, drawing enemy fire, while larger vessels escaped into hyperspace. Many didn't make it. Among those lost was Captain Ryan Mitchell himself, whose final transmission echoed hauntingly over the comms. Tell my family I love them, he whispered, moments before his ship was consumed by a Zorathian blast. Back on Earth, images of the battle flooded news outlets, stirring emotions across the planet. Some hailed the mission as a success, claiming it proved humanity's resilience and determination. Others mourned the lives lost, questioning whether the price was worth paying. Protests erupted once again, with crowds gathering outside government buildings to demand answers. Families of fallen soldiers held vigils, lighting candles in memory of their loved ones. The streets buzzed with anger and grief, a volatile mix that threatened to boil over at any moment. President Rachel Monroe addressed the nation in a somber speech, her face etched with exhaustion. Today, we honor the brave men and women who gave everything to protect our future, she said, standing before rows of flags. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten. But let us also remember why we fight, not for conquest, but for survival. Her words resonated with some, but others saw them as hollow platitudes. Critics accused her administration of mishandling the conflict, pointing to the mounting casualties and economic strain caused by the war effort. Calls for her resignation grew louder, adding to the pressure she already faced from within her own ranks. Meanwhile, Daniel Carter and Samantha Brooks worked tirelessly to expose the truth about the rogue faction behind the initial attack. They had encrypted the incriminating files and sent them to multiple independent journalists, hoping that at least one would manage to publish the story. It wasn't long before the first article appeared online, detailing the conspiracy and naming key figures involved. Public outrage surged as people realized they had been misled. Victor Lang, the politician implicated in the scheme, denied the allegations vehemently. "These accusations are baseless and slanderous," he declared during a press conference. "I have always acted in the best interest of humanity." Yet his words rang false to many, especially when leaked documents revealed his financial ties to arms manufacturers profiting from the war. Protesters descended on corporate headquarters, demanding accountability and justice. Amidst the turmoil, Laura Bennett continued her efforts to reach out to the Zorothians. She knew that exposing the conspiracy wouldn't be enough to repair the broken trust between their species. Humanity needed to show genuine remorse and a willingness to change. Laura reached out to Alex Morgan, hearing about his group of refugees through mutual contacts. She believed his story could serve as a symbol of hope, proof that ordinary people wanted peace, even if their leaders did not. Alex agreed to meet with her, though he was wary. He traveled to a neutral outpost along the border between human and Zorothian territories, bringing Lily with him. The journey was perilous, with patrols from both sides making movement difficult. But when they finally arrived, Laura greeted them warmly, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I know this is a lot to ask," she said, addressing Alex in a quiet corner of the station. "But your experience, your courage, it could make a difference. If the Zorothians hear your story, maybe they'll see that not all humans are like the ones who attacked them." Alex hesitated, glancing at Lily, who clung to his side. "I don't know if I can do that," he admitted. "What if they don't? Listen, what if it makes things worse?" Laura placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "I can't promise it will work, but right now, we need every chance we can get. You're stronger than you think, Alex, stronger than any of us." After much deliberation, Alex agreed to try. With Laura's help, he recorded a message aimed at the Zorothian leadership, speaking from the heart about his experiences and hopes for the future. It was a gamble, but one they felt compelled to take. As the galaxy teetered on the brink of total war, small acts of defiance began to emerge. Refugees shared stories of survival, soldiers questioned orders, and civilians protested in growing numbers. Even amidst the darkness, sparks of resistance flickered, fragile but persistent. For now, the outcome remained uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity's fate would be decided not just by its leaders, but by the choices made by ordinary people willing to stand against fear and hatred.